Building for India. Eye on the prize. Thank you for sticking around. It gives me enormous pleasure to welcome to the stage Nana Murugesan, Vice President, Head of International at Coinbase. Please come up, sir. Big round of applause. Great to see you. Thank you for coming. Now, my business partner, I have a little thing on the side besides doing this sort of thing, WhatsApped me and he said, Sam Bankman-Fried's been arrested.
Yeah.
Wow. And I said, oh my God, what a coincidence. I've got a Coinbase man sitting on the stage next. So please excuse me if we just ignore a bit about Building for India and talk a little bit about Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, if you don't mind, sir. Are we okay to do that? I know you're limited probably to what you can say, but given that I'm a news guy, given that I'm a business journalist, I just can't let this opportunity go to talk about the breaking news story out there. But thank you, Nana, for joining us. I mean, this story, it's incredible, isn't it, how it's unfolded. Bankman-Fried's been arrested in Bahamas. The US has filed a criminal indictment. The House of Representatives today has got a hearing on FTX's collapse, which Sam Bankman-Fried was meant to testify on. How do you respond to all this? I mean, you're in the industry, you're one of the big names in the industry, the trusted names, the listed names. How do you feel about all this?
Well, first of all, I just woke up to that.
Yeah.
Woke up to that news, so that was, but you know, it's getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
It feels like every day there's a new story, and just when you thought that this is sort of like the end of it, and then the next day you see something else. And it's as much of a surprise to us and eye-opening to us as it's probably for you. But I guess the one thing I wanted to mention is this is, in some ways, we feel like it's a validation of our strategy. We've kind of taken the hard route of being a publicly listed US company. We have licenses. We are obviously operating out of very respected jurisdictions. And so I think we've seen companies like FTX move so fast, like unbelievably fast. And I think we feel like our strategy of just working with regulators and just doing things in an open and transparent way is sort of like almost validated.
But of course, the whole industry is being affected by this. Yes,
yeah.
You're listed, you abide by rules, you abide by regulations, which we'll see if FTX did or not. You can make your own judgments. We'll let the lawmakers make those assessments. But you are being affected by it because the whole industry is being pointed at and accused of being untrustworthy, accused of being a house of cards, accused of being a pyramid scheme. How does Coinbase try to separate itself from the damage that's done to the entire space?
Yeah, I agree with you, by the
Yes.
way, right? I think this is certainly not great for the industry, but there's bad news and good news with this, right? And we've seen this time and again, right? During the internet boom, we saw the WorldComs of the world, but at the end of the day, the industry kind of came out of that stronger than ever before. We saw the financial crisis and a lot of things happening like Madoff and other stuff, but we did see that the financial sector came out of it stronger. I believe it's very, very similar to what we've seen in the past. History repeats itself.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very, very painful in the near term. But I think for those who are in the industry for the right reasons, I think are going to come out stronger out of this. And I think the industry will do well.
You're saying, because we've had in crypto a number of cycles, 2013, 2017, and then obviously last year, it seems to be every 4 years. You say we need this flush out, to flush out the leverage, the speculation, and then we start again and rebuild, and the best projects obviously grow.
Yeah, those who are in the industry for the right reasons and doing the right things, even though they may
it seemed as
appear
if
like
Sam
moving slowly.
Bankman-Fried was in the industry. Would you all agree? I mean, it seemed like Sam Bankman-Fried was in the industry for the right reasons. I mean, he was toppled in, as you say, record quick time. He was the leading light of the industry. Doesn't that make one think, who's the next man or woman who's giving this impression that they're this angel and saving all these crypto companies that are falling by the wayside? I mean, That's the sort of question that people are asking, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't have all the details,
No,
but there's a big difference between, all I can say is there's a big difference between what you say and what you do.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I think there are amazing narratives that came out of SBF and many others, right? But then you have to differentiate between what people are saying versus what people are doing. And I think we're very focused on doing and building. And I think that's, it's the longer path, the tougher path, but I think that's going to be the right
What does the regulatory environment look like in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, given this? And we know the US is going to clamp down on crypto. You're obviously already, regulated, but do you welcome regulation? What's the sort of regulation that crypto needs to ensure that we're still encouraging entrepreneurial, brilliant people to come into the industry and create problem-solving solutions?
I think from the beginning, we've always said this, which is we consider ourselves regulation first. We welcome regulation. We've invested tremendous amount of resources in security and compliance. And if you look at the jurisdiction that we operate in, United States, a publicly listed company, we have licenses from some of the toughest jurisdictions out there, like Germany and Japan and others. So I think we've taken that path. And to your question, I think regulators are going to be looking at this closely, and that's great, right? I mean, which means that there's going to be a lot of regulatory frameworks that are going to be built. We're very excited about what's happening in UAE, super excited about what's happening in India, as well as some of these. There's almost like an urgency to have these regulatory frameworks in place so that we can have a more open, a more safe, and a more accountable regime for crypto and Web3 companies to operate. And I think it's going to be great for companies that have kind of taken that path. We're excited by that.
Tell us about Coinbase in the UAE and Coinbase in India. Start with the UAE and then move on to India.
Yeah, maybe I'll just zoom out a little bit, talk about Coinbase very, very quickly, and then international, UAE, India, definitely. So just to zoom out, Coinbase, founded about 10 years back, as a very simple mission in the beginning, right? We have our founders read the Bitcoin white paper, and Brian Armstrong, he was in Argentina, saw a lot of the financial crisis happening over there, and the whole mission was, how do we kind of create a more financially inclusive financial freedom in the world? And Bitcoin was just a great way to do that. So that's what happened like 10 years back, a simple mission to create financial freedom and economic freedom in the world. 10 years passed, so fast forward to today, Coinbase, like I mentioned, is a publicly listed, US publicly listed company. We have more than 100 million verified users in retail. We have nearly 15,000 institutional clients and nearly 250,000 developer partners. And this includes the Googles of the world, the BlackRocks of the world, right? Some of the largest names in the industry. So we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the last 10 years. And international is an existential priority for us, because if you look at our mission statement, it's about increasing economic freedom in the world, right? And so obviously we started in the US, so I think expanding and maximizing our global coverage and kind of providing the value proposition that we've been talking about to people all around the world, to billions of people, and bring them into the Web3 economy is an existential priority. So international, which is what I lead, is a lot of exciting things going on. And specifically, when you think about what's happening in the UAE, lots of interesting developments as Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and others, right? I mean, there's a lot of regulatory frameworks that are developing that's creating a very interesting hub here. And of course, India, when you have a mission of bringing billions of people into the Web3 economy, I mean, India is going to be front and center of that. And so India is a digital powerhouse for so many different reasons. And so we are super happy about India as well. So yeah, that's why we are here. Almost like two birds with this conference. So again, thanks for having us.
Not at all. And let's ask a bit more about India, the considerations you need as an international company to get into India. Let's welcome to the stage Amit Zutshi of Morphosis Venture Capital. He's going to join us. And also Eran Shlomo, CEO of Dataloop, which is a tech company out of Israel. Thank you both. Come and join the party. Amit, good to see you. Eran, good to see you as well. Amit, what do we need to do to bear in mind when we're building for India? Because this panel, as it's up there, building for India. So what do we as entrepreneurs, as builders, what do we need to keep in mind when we're building for India?
I think the main thing that's worth thinking about is that India is a very different market. Right? It's big. We all know that. There's 1.3, 1.4 billion people. And it's complex for a variety of reasons, right? Partly because of the huge diversity across the country. So one, it's not a homogeneous market. You think of Europe not as a homogeneous market. You think of Latin America not as a homogeneous market. The same sort of thought process needs to be applied to India as well, because every state, every culture, especially when it comes to consumer businesses, it is consumer-focused businesses. Consumers consume very differently in different parts of the country, right? So that's one critical thing to bear in mind. It's not homogeneous. The second thing is, on a positive side, is that because it's a complex market and it's had the history that it has had, there are a million problems to address. So with the right sort of business models and the right apps, if it's a consumer business or any other platform that companies have, there are many problems to attack. So you've got to be careful about which problem you want to attack and with what business model that you want to take into that. And just like any other country, whether it's Indian companies getting out of the country or from any country to any other country, you've got to think about what the business model is for that particular country. Indians would typically buy from Indians, just like any other country would from their own. That said, unless it's a paradigm redefining kind of business, right? Like Facebook and Amazon and Google back in the day. But the vast majority of it is very national unless you think about it in a very localized way as you expand into another country, and that's true for India as well. The other thing that's worth saying about India is that it's a mobile heavy market, right? It's not so much tablets, it's not so much desktops and laptops, it's mobile friendly. And you've got consumers through the length and breadth of the country running into nearly 1 billion broadband connections, mobile broadband connections. So that's something that you've got to keep in mind as you sort of take your propositions. And finally, I guess the key thing is that it's a value-conscious country. So it's known for frugal innovation. And we've got to keep that in mind as you go from any part of the world into India.
And we're going to ask you and all of you, how do we take that into account? How do we make the most of the innovation that's coming out of India? But Eran, first, what are the considerations that an international company should have when they're looking to enter India?
I think we're in I would say, remarkable times. India is now experiencing multiple lanes of change happen to it all at the same time. In the beginning, you could see a transformation from becoming ID services driven on the tech to take a more central place. Then you have India moving from more B2C tech to more business, enterprise software, AI, and blockchain. And then on the final part, you would add the global change that now India is becoming the more dominant parts in the Asian hemisphere. Combine all of these together, naturally, the first thing you would encounter is shortage of talent, right? You need talent to power all that. The second thing is I would say, thinking of go-to-market, where the go-to-market usually happens in Europe or the US. Now India has to develop its own go-to-market scheme, which is something that's relatively new. If you combine all of these together, we see an amazing opportunity because India is in the core of the change of AI. Probably some of you have seen the latest development with the ChatGPT. It's here, right? People are saying disruption is coming, AI will take jobs, all that. Somewhere in the future, self-driving cars are not waiting outside still, but it's 3 to 5 years time frame. It's coming, it's here. And this presents amazing opportunity to the Indian market, but also as becoming the AI automation nation, rather than being the automated nation or being automated. And I think in Dataloop, we are doing it for 5 years, and I believe that this is India decade. And this is what we do.
How does the Coinbase approach when attacking India, trying to break India? How does it differ from other nations, your approach towards other nations? What are the nuances?
I think in India particularly, it's very important to build from the country for the country. Its localization can be a huge competitive advantage, especially given the diversity in the country, the number of languages in the country, and there's just countries within a country, right? And so I think we are taking this philosophy of, not just in India, we do this all around the world, but particularly in India, we have hundreds of engineers. I think we're the single largest investor in cash terms in Web3. So both through our investments, the startups that we invest in, and also through the engineers we have in the country, so both through an inorganic strategy as well as through an organic strategy, we take this approach of building from the country for the country. And I think that's going to be a significant source of competitive advantage, especially over the long term, right? And it's very much a long-term play. That's the approach we're taking.
Building from the country for the country, is that how you look at it, Amit? I mean, how do we make the most from the innovation that's coming out of India? You talk about innovation, every panel, innovation, innovation, innovation. How do we as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, startups, founders, how do we make the most of that innovation?
So, I mean, there's two different parts to that, I guess. So one is, make in India for India, right? Which is what you talked about. And that's absolutely critical for a company to be successful in India. And then there is that one of the earlier panels was talking about everybody now talks about made in India for the world. That's the kind of business model we are focused on as investors as well. And some of the things that apply to companies getting into India sort of apply to the companies getting out of India as well. And they are about localization in the markets that they get out to. Now, you'd find some business models, the first panel talked about Southeast Asia, Latin America, parts of the Middle East, potentially even Africa, as obvious markets where some of the problems are similar. And you could make some tweaks to your business models and to your platforms and sort of go in and then do business in those countries, but still need a highly localized ecosystem to be able to do that rather than take an export view. We are going to sit in India, have a small sales team sitting in whichever country we are going into and do it from there. Which is not going to work very well and hasn't worked very well. The companies that have made it successful from India out into the rest of the world have actually created localized models in the rest of the world. And for investors sitting in those parts of the world, for entrepreneurs sitting in those parts of the world, I think there is more and more challenge now coming to those countries, to those entrepreneurs who are creating business models for their respective countries, now getting competition from entrepreneurs in India, from the innovation that's coming out from India. So that's one part of it. But and that sort of just helps the whole ecosystem to take the next step forward. Other than that, the consumers and the B2B customers, depending on what kind of business we are talking about, they benefit a huge deal from this innovation, and a lot of the corporates, the traditional corporates sitting around the world, they are getting disrupted left, right, and center. It's a long process for them while they sort of watch their businesses getting disrupted. But some of them will get there quicker than others in terms of taking some of that innovation, putting it into their systems, maybe making acquisitions to be able to take advantage of that for the benefit of the consumers and the businesses in the country.
How are you taking advantage of it, Eran, of the innovation coming out of India?
So you could see it everywhere, right? Just a month or two, you will walk in the streets and you see the cranes and you will see the energy is there. I think that the biggest challenge we see now, there is a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, but it's kind of a cluster forming. Like clusters tend to form. We know in Israel we have a tech cybersecurity cluster. We believe that data and AI is a cluster now being formed in India. And so the first thing, we need capital, right? So an entire VC needs to fund that innovation, and that VC needs to sustain on returns. That means that you need to build go-to-market, you need to build the efficiency of sales and marketing to justify the continuous invention and expansions. And at the end of the day, at Dataloop, we look for talent. And we work, I would say, with probably very well-known Indian brands from Infosys to task us and more pioneers in our field like Cogito and iMerit. And these teams are now understand that they're in the middle of disruption in the tech ecosystem, but they have hard time finding the talent, right? So we're helping them doing that, but at the end of the day, you could see that innovation, that skill set already on the ground. But I would say what I miss or a place that could boost that is like a more maybe government guidance or central assistance in how you formalize innovation into productivity, business productivity, and this is kind of a gap. And we're doing it in our world, and we're actually connecting markets. So in our market, we solve it to ourselves and, of course, to our partners. But in the global or more general parts, I think this is the leap India is about to take or should be taking. How do I take innovation, potential, and focus it into productivity and returns? At the end of the day, we need returns.
What are the great untapped opportunities for you in India?
Yeah,
What's the low-hanging fruit and the fruit that's a little bit further away?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're super excited is with each evolution of the internet, India has been like moving up the value stack. So Web 1, India was sort of like a outsourcing hub type of a situation, but then Web 2 kind of became like a tech hub for a lot of companies from the Facebooks of the world to the Googles of the world. I think with Web 3, I think the real eye on the prize we have is India can really take the leadership role, like you were saying, building for the world, right? I mean, not just building for India, but for the world. And I think India is a great opportunity with almost 50,000 engineers or so in Web3, and just the decentralized nature of India, which opens up all parts of India, not just the few cities that we know as hotspots. So even at Coinbase, we have people in Kashmir and Haridwar and all over India working for us in a decentralized, in a remote-first kind of a setup. So I think unlocking the full power of India across not just tier 1 cities, but all tiers of cities, and really taking that leadership role with the talent pool that India has, and so that India is really a leader in Web3. I think that's what we are really excited. That's really the big eye on the prize that we have with India.
And what about you, Amit? I mean, you've got this fund, you're investing in early stage tech startups in India. What's exciting you right now? What types of company are you looking at? What does India have that maybe other countries don't?
So we are focused on B2B business models.
Yeah.
I mean, as sort of history has been sort of testament to direct-to-consumer companies, with large number of them, not all, with difficult unit economics. So that's just a generic thing. That's not specific to India. And it's also difficult for consumer-based companies, which are not paradigm-shifting in nature, to become global. So we are focused on B2B-focused companies that sort of get out there. And within that, we are looking at ESG positive business models.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely critical, partly because, I mean, ESG is a big thing globally, and it's only getting, the war and the temporary issues with that aside, is an important paradigm for the world, in the way the world is shifting. But in India, it's a big part of the government's vision as well, and there's a huge amount of progress that's been made in that. But the companies that we invest in are early stage companies. And these are very sharp, very ambitious people who were, for the good companies who are, building some great products for the right problems. They would take any help that they can get to make sure that they can scale those companies. If you look at the Indian pyramid of companies, of startups over the last 10 years or so, you'd find that on a per capita basis, we often talk about over 100 unicorns, third highest number of unicorns in the world, after the US and China, but on a per capita basis, it could be better. There is a long way to go, and that's the potential of the promise and with everything. But there is a lot of help that the companies need to be able to scale the businesses and not get into some of the issues that some larger companies have got into in recent times, particularly with the correction. Governance needs to be strong. Organization development and leadership is absolutely fundamental as you move from 10 companies, 10 customers to 1,000 customers, if you're a B2B company, and move from 50 people to 2,000 people. How do you build those companies and how do you lead those companies is absolutely critical. How do you become global in terms of customer acquisition and retention, talent attraction and retention? So all of those things are absolutely fundamental. So the kind of companies we are looking at are ones where the teams are relatively mature in their thought process. And then we sort of build out around them in terms of helping them as much as we possibly can through some institutional frameworks to expand internationally and grow responsibly.
I want to open it to the floor. This question's for Eran because I want him to say a few words. So hands up. Who's going to be brave? Come on, let's have a question from the audience. Otherwise, I'll just point to one of you and I'll name and shame you. So who wants to ask a question? Come on, be brave. Lady, there you go. Lady in the front. We'll just bring you a microphone. It's good. It's good. We like you're brave. Thank you so much. Remind us who you are again. And
okay, for the third time, my name is Shraddha. I'm a market entry specialist. I help companies enter new markets. So this is not a straight-jacketed question to you. So if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I was in GITEX in Dubai in September, and the Ukrainian digital economy minister was here. And he made a very good use case for crypto, where a lot of crowdfunding has been raised for Ukraine via that. And then the counter was Russia using similar cryptocurrency to evade sanctions. We've had the Canadian truckers protest, you've had China banning cryptocurrency. People are looking at it as an asset class, but it has many more disruptive implications. So when you talk to regulators with your size, when you're talking to governments, is this something that the regulators are concerned with? What are the general themes and how will it impact you as a company? Because it is a very long-term impact of crypto, blockchain, et cetera, which people are really not thinking about.
No, that's a great question. And thanks again for asking several questions today. So one common theme that we see across different countries is there's a lot of interest in blockchain technology. I think a lot of us hear a lot of great things and the promise of blockchain. There's also a lot of interest in the Web3 economy. So it's almost like a math problem, right? Like there's the blockchain technology, a lot of interest, and then the Web3 economy, which is the output, right? There's an input and there's an output. But there's a missing link that makes that come to life, and that's tokens, right? Tokenization. That's the incentive scheme, because for any technology to work, you need an incentive mechanism. And for blockchain technology to drive the Web3 economy forward, you need that incentive mechanism, which is what the tokens, crypto, that provides. So I think we just need to do a better job, first of all, explaining this on how governments and regulators who are interested in blockchain and the next generation of the internet, how they can leverage tokens. So I think that's one thing we should do a better job as an industry. The second thing, and we invest a lot of resources here, is even in those tokens, there's a lot of variation in what are those more safer ones and what are those that are not that safe. So we have a lot of investments on asset listings, how do we think about which tokens to list on our platform and what do we want to support and what do we not want to support. We say no to so many tokens out there, so many assets out there. So I think these are all things that I think regulators are going to be watching very carefully because there's a lot of variation here. But it's really important for us to understand that we need an incentive system that's going to come from tokenization. And then we need to figure out what are the right types of safe tokens that we want to put out there, which can vary from country to country. But that's where we need to work very closely with the regulators, with all the different. So I think this is what the process which we are taking. But hopefully we can make progress with this.
Before I let Eran say the final words, how low is Bitcoin going to go? We've been as low as 15,500.
Yeah.
I think we're about 17,000 or so today. Are we going to 10 and lower or not?
If I had a crystal ball, no, I think it's.
Do you think we're near the lows? We're sort of.
Hopefully,
yeah.
It's been stabilizing here, right?
Yeah.
Sometime it's but. I hope it goes back to, fingers crossed. But
60,
it's just like
69,000.
any asset class, it's hard to predict. But I think I can tell you that there's a lot. Bitcoin has been around for a while now.
Yeah.
It's one of the more mature asset classes, and there's a lot of holdings of Bitcoin. So hopefully that'll keep it somewhat stable. So let's see.
Eran, wrap this up for us. Tie this panel up in a nice bow. We've put it in a box. We've laid it all out. Tie it all up for us.
Yeah, I think at least in our domain, and it's a much broader. I think if you take a look today, building for India, Just take a look on the table, what we have on the table. What's the asset India as a nation has? First, India is already in the backbone of processing the world's data, right? Through BPOs, you can call it call centers. Whatever you take a look, a lot of data is already on the land, or at least that's essentially means that the world is trusting India with its data. That's huge. We're in an era where trust is diminished, especially trust with data, and this is a big asset that's on the table. Connected with the rising tech stack and the role data plays on AI, and this is the opportunity you get. Naturally with funding, naturally with you need the finance set, everything should kind of connect together. And I think building for India this is the opportunity.
I'm glad you mentioned the rising tech stack, because the next panel is called Globalizing the Indian Stack.
I have a question, just one question.
I think I'm going to be told off if you ask a question. They're going to march me out of the building, and you'll never see me again, which you might like to do. I've got to wrap it up. I'm so sorry, but if you want to approach the three wonderful panelists outside, please do so. Massive thanks to Nana, to Amit, and to Eran. Brilliant panel. Thank you all. And next up, Borderless Ambitions, Globalizing the Indian Stack. Thank you all. And please keep asking the questions. You're wonderful. Thank you.